For centuries, scientists have explored the mysteries of the human genome, searching for the keys to longevity, intelligence, and evolution. But what if hidden deep within our DNA lay something far more powerful, a forgotten code dormant, untouched, waiting to be awakened? In a top-secret genetics lab, a breakthrough is made. A team of researchers stumbles upon an anomaly buried in the human genome, something no one expected: code X. Unlike any known genetic sequence, this code appears to be a leftover fragment of evolution, something that, if activated, could push humans beyond their natural limits. Strength beyond imagination. Intelligence that surpasses any AI. The ability to manipulate reality itself. Excitement quickly turns to secrecy. A handful of test subjects, ordinary people from different backgrounds, undergo the first activation trials. At first, the results are astounding. One man's wounds heal almost instantly, a woman finds herself able to control objects with her mind, a child begins speaking in languages they have never learned. But then, the side effects begin. Some subjects experience extreme physical transformations. Others vanish into thin air. And some lose all control, their abilities spiraling into chaos. What was meant to be humanity's next evolutionary leap becomes a dangerous ticking time bomb. Governments race to either harness or suppress the discovery, fearing what would happen if the world knew the truth. But it's too late. The first enhanced humans have already escaped. They are stronger, faster, smarter, and they refuse to be controlled. Now, the world stands at a crossroads. Will Code X lead to a new age of human evolution or the end of civilization as we know it? And most importantly, is this truly a mutation, or was humanity always meant to become something more deep beneath the surface of a cutting-edge genetics research facility? A team of scientists made a discovery that would challenge everything humanity thought it knew about evolution. What began as a routine genome sequencing project soon unraveled into something far more extraordinary, something no one had ever seen before. Dr. Elias Carter, a leading geneticist, had spent years mapping the most obscure and redundant parts of the human genome, areas long considered junk DNA. It was widely believed that these segments were evolutionary leftovers, remnants of traits lost over millennia. But late one evening, as he pored over a newly sequenced sample, he noticed something strange. Hidden within these so-called useless strands was a sequence that didn't match any known genetic blueprint, not in humans, not in animals, not even in the distant evolutionary past. It was something different, something older. At first, the team thought it was an anomaly, a simple error in sequencing. But when multiple tests confirmed its presence in nearly every human DNA sample they analyzed, excitement turned into obsession. The sequence, now labeled Code X, wasn't just a random genetic structure, it was dormant, lying in wait as if it had been switched off long ago. What's more, its complexity suggested a purpose. But what kind of purpose? Further analysis revealed shocking possibilities. Unlike normal genes, which determine everything from eye color to susceptibility to disease, Code X was structured in a way that hinted at potential activation. It was as if something had suppressed it at some point in human history, locking away its full effects. Could this have been an evolutionary fail-safe, a biological kill switch, or was it simply something humanity had never been meant to access? The implications were staggering. If Code X was meant to be activated, what would it unlock? Enhanced intelligence, increased strength, resistance to disease, or perhaps even more radical transformations? And if it had been suppressed, who or what had done it? As news of the discovery spread among the research team, ethical debates quickly erupted. Some believed they had stumbled upon the key to human evolution's next step, while others feared they were meddling with forces beyond their understanding. What if unlocking Code X had unintended consequences? What if it wasn't meant to be used? Despite the doubts, curiosity proved impossible to resist. The lab secured private funding from unknown investors, eager to push the research further. Within weeks, tests were underway. Using experimental gene editing techniques, the first attempts were made to activate Code X in controlled environments. That was when things truly changed. In one of the earliest experiments, a volunteer's wounds healed in seconds before the researchers' eyes. Another subject reported an ability to hear heartbeats from across the room. The changes weren't just biological, they were beyond human. It was only the beginning. Code X had awakened. And the world would never be the same. The research facility, now operating under extreme secrecy, had moved beyond theoretical studies and into live human trials. The discovery of Code X had shaken the scientific community, but only those within the inner circle knew the full scope of what was happening. The potential to unlock superhuman abilities was no longer a fantasy, it was becoming reality. A select group of volunteers, carefully chosen from a pool of candidates with no close family ties or digital footprints, were brought in under the guise of a cutting-edge genetic therapy program. Each of them had agreed to undergo experimental gene activation procedures in exchange for substantial financial compensation. But none of them truly understood what they were signing up for. Dr. Elias Carter, the lead researcher, felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. The lab's investors, an unnamed private entity with limitless resources, demanded results. They wanted to see what humans were capable of once Code X was awakened. Despite his reservations, Carter and his team pushed forward, conducting the first series of controlled activations using advanced CRISPR-based gene editing technology. The process was a delicate one. Code X had been dormant for thousands, perhaps millions of years. Simply flipping it on like a switch wasn't an option. Instead, a tailored virus was engineered to integrate with the genetic material of each test subject, gradually stimulating the dormant sequence. The subjects were monitored 24/7, their bodies reacting in ways no one could predict. The first week was uneventful. Subjects reported minor changes, heightened senses, faster reflexes, and an overall increase in cognitive function. But by day 10, everything changed. One test subject, a former soldier named Daniel Vega, experienced an accelerated healing response. After a minor cut was made on his forearm for testing, the wound closed in seconds. The scientists were astonished. The same effect was soon observed in other subjects, some experiencing minor self-regeneration, while others began exhibiting signs of heightened strength and endurance. But then, things took a darker turn. A woman named Sophia, a quiet and observant test subject, suddenly developed the ability to hear the thoughts of others. What began as whispers turned into a deafening roar inside her mind. Unable to control it, she collapsed, convulsing on the floor as her brain struggled to process the information overload. Within hours, she was removed from the program, placed under high-security medical observation. Another subject, Leon Carter, exhibited an unnatural ability to manipulate his surroundings. Metallic objects in the lab shifted when he focused on them, as if responding to his thoughts. But the more he used the ability, the more unstable his body became. His heart rate fluctuated wildly, his temperature spiked beyond normal human limits, and his blood showed anomalies no one could explain. The scientists realized they had opened a door they couldn't close. Code X wasn't just enhancing humans, it was rewriting them. Some could handle the change. Others couldn't. And then, without warning, one of the test subjects disappeared. Panic spread through the research facility as news of the missing test subject reached Dr. Elias Carter. The security footage was reviewed over and over, but it made no sense. One moment, Subject 07, a man named Aaron Graves, was in his containment room, and the next, he was simply gone. No alarms had been triggered. No forced entry or exit. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The other test subjects had begun exhibiting more extreme transformations, but none had displayed anything like this. Graves had shown early signs of heightened perception, but there was nothing to indicate he had the ability to phase out of reality itself. Scientists scrambled for answers, running simulations, and rechecking their data. Had Code X awakened an ability beyond their understanding, or had something gone horribly wrong? Meanwhile, the remaining test subjects were reaching new thresholds of power. Daniel Vega's self-regeneration had become near instantaneous. He could recover from deep wounds in minutes. Sophia, despite struggling with overwhelming telepathic input, was now able to selectively read minds at will. Leon Carter's manipulation of his surroundings had evolved. He could control metal with precise movements, almost like an extension of his own body. But with these powers came side effects. Vega complained of uncontrollable rage, feeling a primal aggression welling up inside him. Sophia's body temperature remained dangerously high, her brain activity off the charts, as if her consciousness was operating on a different level. Carter, despite his refined control over metal, experienced terrifying moments of dissociation, claiming he felt as if he was slipping between two realities. Then, 3 days after Aaron Graves' disappearance, he came back. It happened in the middle of the night. Security sensors in the lab picked up an anomaly in an empty containment cell. By the time guards arrived, Graves was standing in the center of the room, dazed, weak, and terrified. His body had undergone radical changes. His skin was translucent, his eyes pitch black, and when he spoke, his voice echoed unnaturally, as if multiple voices were speaking at once. "I wasn't alone," he whispered, shaking. "There's something else watching." The scientists demanded answers, but Graves could barely explain what had happened. He described falling through space, through time itself, seeing glimpses of places that didn't exist. He spoke of hearing whispers from beings that knew about Code X, beings that had been waiting for someone to unlock it. The team realized with growing horror that Code X wasn't just an evolutionary key. It was something far more ancient and unnatural. It had been locked away for a reason. And now, they had unleashed it. The research facility was no longer just a place of scientific discovery, it had become a battlefield of survival. The return of Aaron Graves had changed everything. He was no longer entirely human, and worse, his warning of something watching sent a chilling wave of fear through the team. The scientists, once thrilled at the idea of unlocking the next stage of human evolution, now realized they had tampered with something beyond their understanding. Dr. Elias Carter knew they had to shut the program down, but the investors funding the research had other ideas. The organization behind the project wasn't just interested in human enhancement, they had been waiting for this moment. They wanted to force the full activation of Code X, no matter the cost. To them, these test subjects weren't people anymore. They were weapons in the making, but something was going wrong, fast. The test subjects were no longer in control of their abilities. Sophia's telepathic reach expanded beyond her control, allowing her to hear not only thoughts within the facility but also something inhuman whispering back. She spoke of voices outside of time, of entities lurking in the genetic past of humanity, watching, waiting for someone to let them in. Leon Carter, once able to control metal with precision, now found it responding to him even when he wasn't trying. The walls of the lab warped and twisted in his presence, and machines malfunctioned the closer he got. His mind was fracturing, as if it wasn't meant to exist in just one reality anymore. And then, there was Daniel Vega. The strongest, most stable subject had become a walking nightmare. His regenerative abilities had evolved beyond healing. His body was reshaping itself, muscle fibers reinforcing faster than humanly possible. He was becoming something else, something no one had predicted. But with his transformation came a hunger, an overwhelming, primal urge to dominate and destroy. Dr. Carter knew they were running out of time. If they didn't stop the experiment, the test subjects would become unstoppable or worse, unstable. He gathered what remained of his trusted team and made a desperate plan: shut the project down, erase the research, and escape before the investors could intervene. But the facility wasn't just under scientific control anymore. The backers of the project had sent in armed security forces, tasked with securing the test subjects at any cost. The scientists weren't employees anymore, they were liabilities. And just as the first shots were fired, the test subjects lost control entirely. The walls trembled. The air distorted as reality itself seemed to bend. Security forces were lifted into the air and crushed without a single hand touching them. Sophia collapsed, screaming, as something tried to push through her mind. And in the center of the chaos, Daniel Vega roared, his body breaking the limits of human form, his eyes burning with something ancient and unstoppable. The experiment had reached the point of no return. And the world had no idea what was coming. The moment the test subjects lost control, the facility became a war zone. Walls twisted, security alarms blared, and the air itself vibrated with an unnatural energy. The research team scrambled to escape, but Dr. Elias Carter knew that even if they made it out, it was already too late. Humanity had crossed a line it was never meant to cross. Daniel Vega stood in the center of the chaos, his body pulsating with raw power. His skin had darkened into something almost metallic, his muscles shifting and expanding in real time. He was no longer just a man, he was something beyond human, beyond even evolution. His eyes burned with a golden glow, and when he moved, the walls around him shuddered as if the entire building was responding to his presence. Security forces opened fire. The bullets never reached him. They stopped mid-air, vibrating violently before reversing course, striking the men who fired them. Blood sprayed across the lab, but Vega didn't even flinch. He was something more now, something unstoppable. Sophia, still on the floor, clutched her head in agony. The voices she had once barely controlled were now screaming inside her mind. But it wasn't just thoughts she was hearing anymore, it was something else. "They're here," she whispered, her voice hollow. "They're coming through." Leon Carter, who had spent days struggling to keep his control over metal, now found himself unable to resist. The walls, the floors, even the very structure of the facility bent toward him. His body flickered, as if he was phasing between dimensions, his voice distorted when he tried to speak. Then Aaron Graves, the man who had disappeared and come back changed, stepped forward. His body was still translucent, his black eyes locked onto Vega. "This isn't just about us anymore," he said in a voice that echoed unnaturally. Code X wasn't an accident. It wasn't just dormant. Dr. Carter stared at him, breathless. "What do you mean?" Graves shook his head. "It was sealed away for a reason. And we just opened the door." The ground beneath them rumbled, a deep, unnatural sound reverberating through the entire facility. The metal walls began to warp, shifting into grotesque shapes. The very fabric of reality was unraveling. From the depths of the lab, a rift began to form a tear in space itself. Dark tendrils of energy stretched from within, and a shape loomed beyond the veil, massive and indescribable. Sophia let out a blood-curdling scream as her body convulsed. "They're not just watching us anymore," she sobbed. "They're coming through." Vega turned to face the rift, his expression unreadable. But then, a slow, knowing smile crept across his face. "Let them come," he said. And then, the world changed forever.